bring in the man who's been slaving over a hot laptop, the one and only Hank South of Horns247.com. Hank, great job, first of all. Unbelievable coverage over at Horns247.com. The last time I checked, I'm hitting refresh, Texas is still the number one ranked recruiting class. Tell us your thoughts on how the day has gone for Texas.
Yeah, I think overall, very little drama. One surprise, I'd say, with Kellen Wiley opting to commit to Miami and sign with Miami. It's not a surprise in the sense that like Miami wasn't involved, just that, they started to, the feeling was they were trailing for him over the last few weeks. He didn't go on his official visit to Coral Gables. And, it seemed more of a Texas, Maryland, Louisville kind of thing late. And then, he decided to go to Miami. So that's the one surprise. I think overall, really strong day. I don't think enough can be said. The fact that they lost John Mills and Joseph Mbachu over the weekend, but they signed every other commitment, with all the talk and all the drama the last few weeks of, Florida's going to flip Jamie French and Myron Charles. USC came on late for Josiah Sharma. Nick Townsend was visiting Texas A&M. All those guys signed with Texas. And it was, relatively quickly too. Like I think 95% of the class was signed by 9 a.m. I feel like. So
yeah, it felt like Myron Charles and Jamie French were one of the first two.
Yeah, I'm not going to lie. I woke up a little bit later than I wanted to, 6:25, and I'm looking at my phone. I go, okay. Not that we weren't expecting it. We were planning on them being in the class. So, but yeah, no, it happened very quickly. I think the only guys that were kind of stressing viewers out were Zalis Hicks. But at the end of the day, he even said yesterday he wasn't signing until 12. So, I mean, I think people were just, you see the most of the class signed so early, then you're like, well, what's going on? Why isn't it's the same thing with Ryan Wingo last year, who stayed up late playing video games. And that's what he says. But, so what's that?
He stayed up late playing video games and slept in.
Yes.
This is what he said.
That's what he said. Exactly. And then Sharma, there was reports on the, West Coast that USC was making a big run, and maybe they were, but Texas was able to seal the deal there and get him on board, which is huge, at a position of need. So, here we're at, 138. We just saw Javion Hilson commit to Missouri. I can't even wrap my head around that recruitment and how crazy and the twists and turns of that, committed to Alabama, decommitted, committed to Florida State, decommitted, was down to Texas and Texas A&M. Missouri offered on November 20th, 2 weeks ago, and he's committed to Missouri. Michigan was involved too. So that was kind of wild. But again, we've been saying for the last few days we weren't expecting Texas. It was just kind of one of those things. I'm getting notifications on people committing now. Not to Texas. But so, yeah, that's where we're at. We're waiting for Michael Fasusi at 2:00. I still, as much as Texas would love to have him, I still lean Oklahoma. I think he's going to stick with Oklahoma. I think Bill Bedenbaugh was, probably the thing that pushed the Sooners over. But Texas is still working it. Kyle Flood, the entire staff, Chris Gilbert, Steve Sarkisian. So we'll see. We've seen crazier things happen, but I'm not projecting him in the class at this point. So where that leaves us right now is Texas is number one in the recruiting rankings. And they'll probably stay there unless, Oregon's making a crazy run. I don't know how many more guys they could actually take to overtake Texas, but it's likely coming down to Justice Terry on Friday. So, Georgia and Texas are playing in the SEC championship on Saturday, and on Friday they're playing for the national recruiting championship between Justice Terry, because wherever he goes, that's going to be the number one class. And I will say, if Fasusi does end up at Texas somehow, that would probably give Texas enough to hold on regardless of Justice Terry's decision. I'm doing this based off of, assuming Fasusi sticks with Oklahoma. So still some moving parts, but, Texas fans can enjoy the number one class for a couple days. And they're in it for Justice Terry. I'm not saying that's, not going to happen. They're working him. So we'll see how it all shakes out.
What do you like about Justice Terry? Who would you compare him to? How is he a plug and play
Yeah, I think so. First of all, I mean, I think recruiting the state of Georgia and the presence Texas is making themselves, or that they have, or they're building in the state of Georgia. I mean, that's a good state to go to. You talk about Texas in high school football, Florida high school football, California high school football. Georgia's right there. I mean, I think they have the most NFL guys, in terms of like whatever the per capita, all that stuff.
Especially interior D linemen,
Yes,
Hank.
yes, that's where Texas has really hit hard. They've tried to, at least. Walter Mathis was a guy they really liked. That's committed to LSU. He signed with LSU today. Kevin Wynn was a guy that they seemed like they had some momentum for a while, and looks like he might either stick with Florida State or go to South Carolina, maybe Georgia. But Justice Terry, I mean, his comp on 24/7 Sports is Jalen Carter, and I think anybody that follows college football knows the terror that Jalen Carter was for opposing offensive lines at the University of Georgia. So, if that's his comp, sign him up, because, there's a place for him in Austin. But no, really athletic, big body, aggressive, good first step. He's got all of it. He can move around on the defensive line. And again, just he plays, high level competition. I know, 6 foot, I think his verified is 6'5", 275, length, plugs gaps, all the things you want. So, you can see why Texas wants him. And then again, they got Myron Charles and Mimbachu. That's great. They needed those guys. It's huge. They're going to need more guys. They need to get, if they can't get Justice Terry, I think you'll see them put a pretty heavy emphasis on the portal for defensive line, because of the guys. They're going to have several guys go to the NFL after this season, that just like they did last season. So yeah, that'll be an interesting spot.
And you like Josiah Sharma too.
Yeah. And, I think Sharma is a guy that converted to defensive line, I think a little bit later. So he was an offensive lineman. He's moved over to the defensive line. So I think he's still, he has more polishing to do. I think Myron Charles is a guy that could play like kind of like in the sense of like an Alex January, could play immediately next year if they needed him, which they could. But Sharma, I think, is probably going to take a little seasoning. But again, has all the traits to be pretty special.
Yeah. Hank, Jonah Williams, Galveston Ball, top signing for Texas today. What's his situation? Because we know he's a two-way player, probably playing baseball and football at Texas. How is that going to work exactly? Because is he going to be an early enrollee? Does that mean he goes and starts baseball first just because the baseball season starting in February, or is he going to hit spring ball? Like, what's his situation going to be?
Yeah, I'll be curious to see how all that unfolds, and his time management, because that is the plan. He had an injury later in the season, or like about midway through the season, missed the playoffs for Galveston Ball, had a slight hairline, collarbone, clavicle, whatever fracture. It's not serious. I think it's like a 4 to 6 week recovery timeline. So he should be healthy regardless, once he gets to campus in January. But that's, talking to his family, like that was the plan. Like he wanted to play baseball in the spring and, be ready for football in the fall. So I don't know, I'm sure they're going to have some sort of plan laid out for that in terms of what he wants to do. He's going to be a very busy guy. Probably won't get to like enjoy much of like a college kid life. He's going to be very, swamped with different sports. But we'll see. He wants to do it. And a lot of the times, I've seen kids, in my time covering recruiting, I've seen baseball, dual baseball, football, but the ones I've seen, like kids that want to play basketball too, like for example, at Alabama, Kool-Aid McKinstry, Terrion Arnold, who are both, on the Saints and the Lion, Chip Nose, Terrion Arnold, they both plan on playing basketball at Alabama too. Like they were recruited to play basketball. I think it lasted like one semester where they were just like, okay, I'm gonna focus on football. Not saying that's gonna happen with Jonah Williams, because I think he is, he's obviously has MLB potential. But you wonder if like at some point you think, okay, this is my future. Maybe I'll focus on this more. But we'll see. But the plan is going in baseball spring and football as well.
And he is as good as you've seen from a safety standpoint coming out of high school since
I mean, he has Kyle. People have said Kyle Hamilton, who obviously Notre Dame legend, I guess, Baltimore Ravens star. But yeah, I mean, I was just listening to Andrew Ivins talk about him on the 24/7 Sports Show, and it was just like, he could play safety, he could play linebacker, you could put him at defensive end probably. He's got the size. I mean, probably I don't know if he could hold up there, but wide receiver too. So like he has a ton of range. He's big. He'll hit you, sideline to sideline, everything. So he's a guy that like he could, and again, it might depend on, how involved he is in spring practice and going through that, with his baseball schedule as well. Because obviously you need to learn the defense and everything and go through all of it. But he's a guy that could like legitimately play early just because he's too good to keep off the field. So yeah, I'll be curious to see, his progression and how involved he is next fall as a true freshman.
So with Mbachu signing with Florida, Texas gets Myron Charles, Josiah Sharma, and the interior defensive line. They're still in it for Justice Terry. Is there anyone else out there in terms of the interior defensive line, or is it portal or bust after that?
Yeah, not to my knowledge. We were kind of keeping an eye on Zion Williams. He just sent his paperwork into LSU, so we were wondering, if something may be going on there. Kevin Wynn, I don't know if he's announced as of this moment, but I think he's probably going to stay closer to home in Georgia or even stick with Florida State. So yeah, I mean that's unless they're in pre-NIL days and what 4 or 5 years ago, there was always kind of those late bloomers that had great senior seasons and started to make a name for themselves in January. Like for example, I remember Ennis Rakestraw. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. I'm thinking back to my Bama days, but yeah, you could several. That was something you saw more prevalently back in a few years back. So I don't know if there's that guy. I think the portal has just occupied so much space now to where it's like, okay, if we didn't get the guys we wanted in the early period, portal opens on Monday. Let's go get them there. So yeah, it'll be curious to see how the portal opening after this early signing period closes impacts things. Cause I think this is like totally screwed over the late bloomer high school guys in terms of like, having an opportunity to be seen, because I think so much mental like space is now going to be turned to the portal and portal only. And I will credit, Sarkisian, and I heard other coaches talking about it today, Marcus Freeman, like they want to go high school first. They only want to use the portal as a supplemental thing. But, every year we see more portal guys get signed. So, yeah, we'll see how it unfolds this year.
Hank, for all the kids that signed today for Texas, Travion Wisner, Gunnar Helm, Cam Williams, all 3-stars, probably all going to be playing on Sundays. What 3-star in this group do you see that can really develop into something special? Because we always pay attention to the 5 and 4s. Those 3-stars, with how Sark and his coaching staff develop, which guys do you see of being like, man, this guy might be rated a 3-star, but he could be truly special if he gets the right coaching and teaching?
Yeah, a couple. I think Jackson Christian, interior offensive lineman from Port Neches, that kid's just like a football player. He's like a country kid. Like he's focused on football. He strong. Like he's 6'5", 309. I mean, he's everything you would want in an offensive lineman. So I could totally see him being a guy in like 2 years that's like a centerpiece of your interior offensive line. So I think he'll outplay his ranking. And then Ricky Stewart, I think this kid's a total stud. I mean, he's one of the most productive backs in the country. He's still on his playoff run right now with Tyler Chapel Hill. I don't have his stats pulled up, but like I should pull them up because I'm talking about him. But I mean, I want to say he averages like 10 yards a carry, if I'm not exaggerating it too much. Yeah, last season he averaged 10.5 yards a carry, ran for 2,800 yards and 40 touchdowns. Those are Barry Sanders type numbers. Then you got this season. I mean, I think he was hurt for a couple games. He came back, so his numbers probably aren't as high. But yeah, last year 2,800 yards, as a sophomore, he ran for 2,200 yards. As a freshman, he ran for almost 1,000 yards. So I mean, he's been productive every step of the way. You put him in with Tashard Choice, and we've seen him develop guys that maybe weren't. I mean, he gets highly recruited guys or highly ranked guys as well. But I think Ricky Stewart could be someone that you look back and be like, wow, this guy probably should have been ranked a little bit higher when all is said and done.
So, Caleb Chester, 3-star corner. Everyone's gonna, be enamored with the high-profile guys, but Caleb Chester, 6'1", 170. What do you think of him at the corner position?
Yeah, I think he's what Texas recruits. I mean, they love size, on the boundaries and length in their cornerbacks, guys that can play man. I mean, he's got it all. And again, I don't kind of similar to like Josiah Sharma. He might take a little polishing, a little development. I mean, as like most incoming freshmen should. I mean, we talk about like college recruits like, this guy's going to take a few years. Like, yeah, they should probably take a few years. They're coming out of high school, So, I mean, all these kids are so college ready now with these high school programs and like the structure they have. But no, Chester's, I mean, I've seen people question kind of like his physicality, but when you turn on his tape, I mean, he's just like, for a cornerback, I mean, he's kind of just like laying the wood. Like he can play. He's a competitor. I think that's his best trait is his competitive edge. I mean, I think he's like kind of heard the doubts and like, people saying this or that. I want to say A&M like stopped recruiting him because they had so many cornerbacks and like, they're like, we're good. And, he listens to that. And obviously he's ended up at Texas. He's landing in a good spot, but I think he still kind of plays with a chip on his shoulder, despite being, a scholarship signee at the University of Texas. So I think he can be a good piece to the program, a guy that's, buys into the program. He's not just there it's not an NIL thing. He just wants to play football at Texas.
Yeah. When you talk about Michael Terry, Hank, where do you see him at? Because we know he's an athlete, jack of all trades guy, Swiss Army knife type of cat. Do you see him more of a guy in the backfield in Steve Sarkisian's offense, or do you see him playing like a wideout as a wide receiver?
I think, and I'm not Steve Sarkisian, but I think having watched him play, I feel like he could be best served at running back. But, again, Texas sees him as a running back, a wide receiver, and a tight end. Like they think he can be a hybrid of all those. So I would imagine they're going to have special stuff drawn up for Michael Terry, motioning him around, moving him around, giving him the ball in different spots, screen game, all that sort of stuff with Michael Terry because they can. I mean, he's 6'3". And I was on the show with Brad earlier and like someone kind of, they're like, how does he compare to like Ryan Wingo? And I think Ryan Wingo was, a little bit more along with the process than I think, I like Ryan Wingo better, coming out of high school, and we've seen Ryan Wingo excel and flash at the college level, but they are similar in the sense that like they're big bodied, just athletes. Like Ryan Wingo at the Army All-American Bowl last year, he told us that like he sees himself as a thicker Jamison Williams. There's been a Deebo Samuel comp. So guys that you can motion out, you can bring him back in the backfield, screen game, jet sweeps, all that sort of stuff. So, you get him on the offense, next year with, assuming Wingo, DeAndre Moore, potentially Matthew Golden if he comes back. You got a stable of healthy running backs. You can do all sorts of things with those guys, assuming CJ Baxter gets back healthy, you have all your guys coming in, throw Michael Terry in there. You got Nick Townsend, Jordan Washington. I mean, the offense could have some very nice pieces next year as things stand now.
Hank, I know you're going 100 miles an hour. Anything else you think is important for people to know before we let you get back at it?
No, yeah. I mean, 2:00, 5 minutes from now, let's see what fusi does. That's probably the biggest thing. That's probably the last thing we'll see today. I think Sark's going to have a press conference at some point. Might be like right now.
I think he's doing it tomorrow.
Oh, did I read the date wrong? Let's see.
Yeah, because I think
the Longhorn Network app says today at 1:50, but I mean that it's not going right now. So let me see.
Let's see here, because I texted Bianco and he said he said nothing for signing day specifically. He said the SEC title game press conference tomorrow will be an opportunity for people to ask him.
I wonder if that signing day thing on the Longhorn Network app was just like like their own thing, not a press conference. Well, cool. Yeah. So it's always fun. Like I love hearing, because the coaches can't talk about the kids by name until they're signed, which is like, it's like, what are these dumb rules? Like at Jonah Williams' commitment ceremony, right after he announced for Texas, he got on FaceTime with Sark. You're like, that's like a cool picture opportunity. But apparently you can't, like, recruiting reporters can't take a picture of that. Like, in whatever, the rules are the rules, but like why, like what is this? What are we doing? Like, it was a cool picture opportunity and we couldn't do it. So, but yeah, so it'll be fun to hear what Sark says. Last year, like he broke down every single signee, which I thought was cool. He gave his thoughts on every single kid. So I would imagine he'd do that again this year. And it sucks because like we won't see Justice Terry's announcement until Friday. So like we don't really have finality to this until then, unless Justice Terry surprises us all and does it earlier. So yeah, we'll see.
Yeah. The practice schedule, that's what's crazy, is he's having to run a normal football game week and signing day, which again, cry from a yacht. First world problems.
He said on Monday was like, he was like, because someone asked him about the schedule and how crazy it is. And he was like, obviously we prefer to be playing for conference championships. It's a good position to be in. He's like, recruits just need to know that like, we can't be here like every hour of the day to babysit y'all. So it's like, if you want a phone call, like we'll get in contact with you, but just know we're also prepping for a pretty big game this Saturday. So I thought that was awesome for him to say, so it is crazy to like, this calendar move up to today and then like having to go straight into the portal in the middle of conference championship week. I will say the coaches don't have to go out on the road though. They probably, I would imagine they're loving that. Like actually get to be home a little bit, this time of year. So yeah, it's crazy.
Well, Hank, go do your thing. We know you're going 100 miles an hour. Thanks so much for the time. And everybody should be over on horns247.com getting all the latest. Appreciate you, brother.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Hank.
Yep.